Good morning. So my name is Natale Di Rubo. I'm the rulemaking officer here in EASA, and I'm responsible for coordinating the activity on the drone regulation. So this will be the last presentation before lunch, so my task will be to stimulate your appetite with giving you a description of what we did so far and what are the plans for the future activity on drones. So this is the first outcome of the new basic regulation. We started to develop a regulation that is risk-based and operation-based. So we moved from a product-centric to define what are the requirements based on how you want to operate the drone. So three main categories has been developed. Open, specific, and certified. And the open are the drones that are operated in the less risky environment. So we are talking about the very small drones for which we don't need to have an authorization before flying if you follow some specific operational limitation. And you just need to register yourself after buying the drone and then fly. If instead you want to do an operation that is a little bit more complicated, with a little bit more risk, then you need to carry out a risk assessment, and your operation is classified in the specific category. And instead, the very large, very more complicated operation, the one that are more similar to what we are normally used with manned aviation, we classify in the certified category, for which we have we will develop some regulation similar to what we have today for manned aviation. So we decide to develop at this moment the regulation on the open and specific category, and we developed the opinion and we published in February of this year, in order to be prepared when the basic regulation came into force on 11 September. And at this moment, the opinion has been transformed by the Commission in legislative act, and it is under discussion, and it is in the final phase of discussion, and we expect that could be adopted the first quarter of next year. In this opinion, we try to identify clearly what are the responsibility of member state, what are the responsibility of the EASA, and also to allow flexibility in order to member states to adapt to what are the needs to their territory. For example, they are able to identify zones where drones cannot be operated. For example, if they want to protect not only area due to safety, like airports, but also area because of privacy or security. So we try to use the tools that we have today for safety, keeping in mind how they could be used also to protect other domain. And the important piece is the registration. The basic regulation mandates that all operators of drones that pose a risk on privacy, security, and safety needs to register themselves. So we translated these requirements in requirements for registration for all drones that, for the operator of all drones that have a mass higher than 250 grams, or you need to register the drones when it is certified. So the two elements of registration is the operator, when you use a drone higher than 250 grams, or the drone when it is certified. Instead, for the certified category, we are planning to publish an opinion in the second quarter of next year, an MPA in the second quarter of next year, and then an opinion later, and I will give you some details in the next slides. To give you an overview of what we mean with open category. Open category means that you need to fly, first of all, visual line of sight, below 120 meters, and so in this way, we protect the other aircraft flying around. And we have a maximum takeoff mass of 25 kilos in general. But within this big category, we have we identified 3 subcategories, as you can see in the slide: A1, A2, and A3. And very important, we make use of the tool of the C marking, the marking that you have on all your mobile phone or your commercial product, that will help us to make sure that the aircraft comply with specific technical requirements that we identified for each classes. So in this way, we were not going to certify this kind of aircraft, but will be up to the market regulatory authority to make sure that everything that is put on the market is compliant with the requirements that EASA listed. So in the A1, that means that you can fly over people. You can use drones that will be marked with a number C0 or C1. That and actually they are very small drones, up to 900 grams, for which we have some technical requirements to reduce the risk in case of crash over people. If instead you want to use a drone bit larger than 900 grams, so you can fly in the subcategory A2. Then you can fly close to people. This means up to 50 meter, or 5 meter if your drone has a special feature that allow to reduce the speed of the drone, and so you can better control it. So in this case, you can fly drone up to 4 kilo. And we tried, when we developed this one, we had in mind to help operators to already have some professional activity already in the open category. Like here, some photographer can use drones for their business. The last subcategory is the A3, in which you need to fly far from people. These are drones up to 25 kilos, for which the technical requirements are a little bit reduced. We just try to protect the other party in flight, like have a maximum height limitation, but they can only be operated in an area where nobody is flying. So when instead you want to do something that is a little bit more complicated, so you cannot do the operation within the limits of the open category, then in the specific category, first of all, you need to carry out a risk assessment. We are participating in a forum, an international forum called JARUS, made of authorities from all over the world, including FAA, China, Brazil, and most of all the biggest authority, in which together we are developing rules that actually are supporting also our rulemaking. And within this group, we developed a specific operation risk assessment, SORA, that is the methodology that we suggest to use for conducting risk assessment. Now, you can use also other methodology, but this was really tailored on development of risk assessment for drones. So after you carry out the risk assessment, you identify what are the mitigation measures that need to be put in place. And then the operator needs to ask for an authorization to the competent authority before starting the operation. In order to facilitate the activity for the operator, we decided to develop some standard scenario, so in which EASA will identify what are the most common operations that will be done in Europe. And for this operation, we will carry out the risk assessment, we'll identify what are the mitigation measures, and we will prepare a package. Then the operator can use it, can follow all the indications that are in the scenario, and then send the package to the competent authority for the authorization. In some cases, for the very less risky operation, we also allow to just send a declaration to the competent authority. So without waiting for the authorization, the operator can conduct the operation. And the last element that we introduced is the certificate of light UAS operator, in which we assess the operator in which way he is able to conduct the risk, and when he is approved by the competent authority, then he can have the privilege to self-authorize its operation without asking for the authorization to the competent authority. An important element for the operation, especially in the lower level and in the urban environment, will be the use space, or how it's called in the US, the UTM. This will be a automatic traffic management system that will provide a set of service to all the operator, and will make sure that we will be able to manage the higher number of operations that we are expecting, especially in the town, in which we will have a lot of the delivery of packages and the professional activity, but also leisure activity inside it. So the use space will provide all the information to the operator, but also the traffic separation in all area. And we need to also to create the interface between the use space at the lower level and what is the standard traffic management system for manned aviation. The project will be developed in 4 phases, and so little by little it will grow. And the first phase, made of registration, electronic identification, and awareness, is already included in the regulation that, as I mentioned, is now in discussion in the European Commission. So this will be, when it will be adopted, will provide the first phase for the use space. The rest will come in the next year, and we expect by 2020-2021 to be already in place. The certified category, what maybe you are also more interested, certified category will be all operations that have a risk similar to the manned aviation. What will be the boundary between specific and certified? First of all, we don't identify a clear weight limit because we want to be more operational centric. So it depends on how you operate. So will be the risk assessment, the SOR that I mentioned before, that will tell to the operator when he can do the operation in the specific category, or when you need to have the certified category. That means you need to have the certification of the aircraft, the certification of the operator, and the license of the remote pilot, unless then the aircraft will be autonomous, when in the future we'll see that the interaction of the pilot could be less. So, since the risk assessment will define the operator, define when the operation will be certified, we already identified in the current regulation that will be published next year, what will be the cases for which we already know that you will fall in the certified category. So whenever you are flying with a large aircraft over a crowd, let's say over a stadium, and when we say large aircraft, we mean more than 3 meters or 34 kilojoule. So in this case, for sure, the risk is so high that you need to have a full certified system. Or when you are flying, we are carrying a dangerous good without the possibility to protect the third party on ground in case of crash. Or when you are transporting passengers. So in that case, you always need to be in the certified category. So at this moment, Part 21 already provides you the possibility to certify drones. As a matter of fact, we have already some application, but it's not optimized. For example, the concept of ILA 1 and ILA 2 is only applicable to manned aviation. So for Part 21, we need to make some adaptation in order to better use Part 21 for drones. And also, as Michael showed before, since we have some new tools, we would like to start using the possibility of also allow declaration, since we have some very low risk operation. And in addition, since we envisage that some manufacturer may decide that even if the aircraft may be operated in the specific category by an operator, so this means that the operator needs to carry out risk assessment and also to show that the aircraft is compliant with technical requirements, we can envisage that a manufacturer would like to elect to comply, to certify his drones, even if it's small drones, and put on the market a drone capable of flying in the specific category, but with a certificate. In this case, the operator does not need to show compliance of the drones with the specific technical requirements, because we'll use the certificate of drones. So we want to include in Part 21 all these possibilities. On the other side, in the MPA, we will cover also the other domain, because for sure we need to have a major change on the ops regulation. So for this one, we will have a specific Part ROC, remote operator certificate. We will have a specific change for the flight control, for the flight license, and we have a dedicated part, remote pilot license. And in addition, we know that at this moment, SERA does not have any big issue to prevent at least the operation in the open specific category, but we are going to carry out a gap analysis to make sure that to verify if there are some initial changes that we need to introduce in the SERA and rule of the air to enable all flight, especially in the open specific category. And then the full changes of SERA will come in 2022. So as I told you, the MPA will be published next year, and we will involve also you and all the industry in before the publication of the MPA in collecting your input. And we expect that the opinion will be published 1 year later, and then there will be the discussion in the European Commission. So the regulation on certified category could come more or less 1 year later. This is the end of the presentation. If you have a question, I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Natale. We got a few questions specifically on drones. Where is it? The latest one is, yeah, how you would recognize intruding traffic for the smallest category of drones.
Yeah, that's still a challenge that we have. At this moment, we still don't have a sense and avoid system reliable that give this function. So at this moment, I think that most of operation in BVLOS that are approved by competent authority are always accompanied by NOTAM or information to other traffic, because still we don't have the technology available. We are working on our side with the other competent authority to define the requirements, and on the other side we are supporting industry with the standardization body to define standards for this system. But until we will not have a reliable and acceptable sense and avoid, fully BVLOS operation will not be able to be conducted without any other precaution.
The next one is an interesting one. How are homemade drones handled? I'm not quite sure what homemade drones are, but...
Yeah, so thank you for the question, so I can explain it a bit more. I did not go into detail since, but So the homemade drone can still be operated in the open category if they are below 25 kilos. I showed you that we have three subcategories, A1, A2, and A3. And actually, so A1, this means that you can fly over people. You can use home-built drone up to 250 grams, because we identified 250 grams as a threshold for which the energy related to the drone is so low that in case of impact, the injury to person is really minimal. So we allow to use, if you build a drone below 250 grams, actually you can do almost whatever you want, except flying over crowds. So if you're flying over a stadium, that is forbidden. It's not very much for safety, but more for security. If instead the drone is higher than 250 grams, but below 25 kilos, in that case, you fly in the subcategory A3. So this means in the area where no one is present, because in this case, we don't have any kind of technical requirements that can ensure that the drone has some kind of reliability. So we mitigate the risk, allowing drone flying in the area where there is no one. In this category follow also the model aircraft, and we know that there is also a lot of sensitivity on this topic. And model aircraft, if they are operated within Model Club Association, they follow under national regulation, so they are outside of our regulation. But in case one single person wants to operate his model by himself without being part of the club, in this case, he needs to follow our regulation, and so either in A1, if he's below 250 grams, or in A3, if he's below 25 kilos.
Is there a question from the floor in between? No. We got one more question asking about how drones, swarms of drones are handled, and is that covered by any consideration from EASA?
Okay, so yeah, so for sure not in the open category. Open category is something that will be very low risk. Swarm of drone most likely will be autonomous drone, or with a level of autonomy quite higher. We allow in the specific category to have autonomous drones. So it will be based on the risk assessment. So based on it, depending on where these swarm of drones are operated, can be either then flown in the specific category, identifying what are the mitigation measures, or in some cases, depending on risk assessment, can fall in the certified category. But our regulation, we try to not limit the possibilities. So the risk assessment is that has been developed by JARUS is a quite powerful tool that drives the operator to see all different items, so it can accommodate also this kind of very new systems like Swarm.
Okay, one last question. Is there intent to develop a CS VTOL, especially in terms of urban mobility?
You may have seen that last week, I think, around 15th of October, we consulted for publication a draft special condition for VTOL. So this is dedicated to projects for which we have received an application, but it's of generic relevance. So we decided to publish for comments this special condition. We will, for the coming months and maybe years, 1-2 years, not develop a CS related to VTOLs. But at some point, we will take the special condition and the experience that we have gathered with the first project, and then open a rulemaking task and transform this potentially into a CS VTOL.
Okay, one last question, I think, for you, Michael, covering the previous topics, whether it's foreseen to issue STCs under the privilege of the DOA.
Yes, clearly. That's part of the proposal on level, or part of the proposal package level of involvement. So it's not only about LOI, but we also propose changes to 21A263. possibility for approved design organizations to receive additional privileges, amongst others for issuing STCs. And then there will be certain conditions going with that. You will have handled in the past similar modifications under the approval of the agency, and in future STC projects, change projects under the privileges, you will apply similar compliance demonstration mechanism. The change will be very similar to what you have done in the past under the oversight of the agency. And under these conditions, we will amend your terms of approval and give you the privilege to approve certain STCs. Certain STCs, that's a term which is used or will be used in Part 21 as of next year.
Okay, thanks for providing the questions. Is there any last question from the floor that you would like? Yes, at the back.
Santa Maria from Eurocomposites. Yeah, continuing on level of involvement, I just want to know if my understanding of LOI is correct. I understand you haven't set a date for the regulation change, but say it is March 2019. I assume there's going to be an implementation period for maybe 6 months. And if I understand right, those that have DOAs do not need to change the procedures, and they have a 6 months, say, implementation period to change the procedures. The second thing is those that are applying for DOAs right now, assuming that they get the DOA before March 2019, I assume they're in the same situation, that they don't need to change the procedures until the implementation period is over. And then you have those that will probably get the DOAs during the implementation period. I assume that they will be given approval with the proviso that you will get your procedures changed by the implementation period date. And the last thing, if I understand right, there are some DOAs that are already enjoying some privileges of LOI at the moment, and they have privileges with procedures approved by their PCM. They are applying those procedures, and I assume that when your regulation comes into force by March 2019, that they may have to change their procedures in line with your regulations, so that then everybody is applying LOI in the same procedure. It's just, if my understanding is right, maybe you would like to correct me on anything that I don't understand.
I think your understanding is totally correct. Just to summarize, and maybe as a cross-check, if I put it in my words, whether it's indeed what you expected us. So the first one on the applicability date, assuming that the regulation will be published and enter into force in March or April next year, the regulation foresees a transition period of 9 months currently. That is in the proposal that was discussed with the member states expert last Friday. So you can expect a transition period of 9 months after the entry into force of the regulation. Then your question on whether there's a need to change the existing DOA procedures. We differentiate, or we will differentiate between those procedures which already contain today, even though it's not a requirement in Part 21 today, but if you already have something in your procedures which reflect the risk-based principles, which reflect LOI elements, then we will accept it. Of course, as you have mentioned at the end of your question, it may have to be fine-tuned, so to reflect all the details that are in the AMCN guidance material. But it's not that you have to submit a new application to change your terms of approval. So this is something about fine-tuning. For all the organizations who don't have anything on level of involvement in their procedures now, they of course have the transition period of 9 months to adapt their internal procedures. But even then, it doesn't mean that on the 9 months plus 1 first day, you'd have to have the procedures ready and approved by us. You have to have them in place before you submit your next application for a TC change, STC approval. That's what we expect, where you should have your LOI procedures adapted.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And just before we break for lunch, we promise you to show you the results of the poll that we ask you to participate to. And Vasilios, can you please display the results? Yeah. So you see the topic that is most interesting to you as far as now is OSD practical experiences, followed by LOI feedback from advanced applications. The poll is still open until this evening, so this is just an intermediate result. We will see how it develops.